10,000 Tales presents Strength by Scott Godfrey, read by Matthew Carson. It was his name that ultimately undid him. Albert Rowan possessed the singular obsession of his name, while others spent their days achieving through marriage, through profession. He sought only one perfect truth, that no one would forget him. Growing up, he was a small, relatively unimportant child. Small, scraggly, easily bullied. But if one looked into his eyes, they'd see a fierce, familiar vengeance easily recognizable in the eyes of certain jungle cats, waiting. In his 10th year, amid parents who were much more interested in his older brother and sister, amid the rigors of school, the young Albert first learned about the drug. It had various names, often colorful, always euphemisms for one simple thing. One could easily drink the pale blue liquid which tasted of a mixture of liquor and turpentine. Results guaranteed. Later, some asked how a 10-year-old could acquire such a thing so easily, but in those days it was hardly difficult. And besides, his parents only noticed when they noticed he was so longer invisible. So it began. Take the drug, notice the effects, and over the next 10 years, amid the various questionings, after all, the police often wondered what happened to a few of young Albert's bullies when they simply disappeared, and all he could say was he had no idea what happened to them, while gazing wistfully to the woods. The boy gained a level of strength which provided him a modicum of respect. His meager frame was poured of muscles, as if his body had been drowned in the flesh of another. His face, always seemingly good-natured, became hard and fixed, and if someone asked his parents, they always would claim how nice and how wonderful their son was amid worried glances one to another, sitting in their small, fragile rooms as their young son flexed absently outside, occasionally looking to them as if he could hear their every word. The drug, of course, could be acquired by anyone. It was relatively inexpensive, and like all such drugs were strictly illegal and therefore tolerated so long as one pretended the drug did not exist, which made perfect sense as long as those who used the drug used them to gain prestige. Sports were ripe with their use, abuse, and tolerance. It has been asked, why, of course, but the answer is as simple as war. If one has power and another does not, there is always disadvantage. But if everyone has the same toolkit, then the appearance of fairness exists, and so any vice is considered a good and any form of corruption seen as a necessary virtue. So he would compete. Amid large gatherings in well-lit auditoriums, among rows of waits and men staring, and women also, the young man would lift, flex, and prove, at times brutally, but always after the match, when others came to challenge him, his strength. Of course, there were side effects, but such price would not have mattered to the young man. Consider he began to take the drug while still a child, and for a decade imagined, as weights fell upward through his will, as women, some far older than he, threw themselves at him, and he learned such fascinating things as pain's features on a woman's face as his brother and sister quietly moved out of his way, never speaking, never once looking him in the eyes again, out of fear of what he'd do, of what his parents would allow him to do. Nothing mattered about the day to come, only the day that was. It was the final match, which ultimately undid him. It had been known for years, before what the drug did, how it strengthened, and what the cost would be. But as I said, such costs do not enter into the equation of a child. Perhaps his family knew at the end. It is known they were there. His older brother with his arm broken in 6 places, his sister with her cut mouth while the young man smiled at her, and of course she didn't smile back. I imagine he must have felt quite immortal that day. Stranger things have happened. The final test of his strength was in a wide, circular auditorium. Gathered about him were 5 or 6 other men, young, bristling of muscles. He went first, easily gathering up half a ton of weight, his body shuddering with anticipation as it gracefully rose all that tonnage. The weight was a solid piece of steel, black and shaped like a pyramid with its top half gone. It was meant to be as awkward to pick up as humanly possible. Still, it yielded easily. That morning, he had mentioned casually to his mother how easy things had been, how finally everyone was looking at him. Her concussion, of course, made it difficult for her to understand. Still, he had ordered her to watch. She had obeyed. As he lifted the weight, he stared at them, contemptuous, proud, knowing that they would all know his name. And as he lifted, he first felt it, the stiffness in his body. The weight fell behind him, and he staggered a moment. No one, of course, came to his aid. Some, most, knew the ultimate fate, and he looked into his father's eyes, and there was no trace of empathy there. The older man looked at his son with a cool, cunningly blank expression, the way certain children look at flies as their wings are torn off. It's hard to say whether young Albert deserved his fate or his family, considering what his family had done to him before his change to adulthood, or if some casually cruel remark had not been said, if some desire for lasting notice had been unexpressed, how his life would have differed. But all things happened as they happened, and strength had made him what he was, or at least provided the means. So he staggered, and then he started to freeze. Eventually the doctors came, and not long after he was taken to hospital. They told him his body was slowly stiffening. Process took over 2 weeks as each muscle hardened slowly. No one came to see him in that time. I'd like to think his last moments were spent on reflecting on the choice he'd made and how he would have done things better, been more humane, if he had been given a second chance. But I am only speculating. After 2 weeks, his body was paralyzed, and he required machines in order to breathe and keep his heart working. Then and only then his parents came. They were given the option to end his life, but they said no. In point of fact, they made a point that he live a long, long, long life, fully conscious. They then carefully, methodically talked about their son to the public, had posters of him made, showcasing the dangers of the drug, pointing out how this and this alone. They stressed that they were loving parents, and before the change had always treated their son the best that they knew how, had made him violent toward them and others. So Albert Rowan became the embodiment of the movement to ban the drug, which had gained him his strength to get revenge on those who he thought deserved it. Some even believe that his parents eventually propped their boy up in a park as a living statue, living proof of the dangers of the drug. But there is only circumstantial proof of that. Though he lived another 20 years, Albert Rowan's life ended when his strength ended him. After that, he was a prop, used and abused by others. But some can argue his life then changed little before the drug and after the drug ultimately failed him. At any rate, his name is known and his life documented. At least the life that anyone cares about. He was 20 years old. The end.